My parents must have spent their 20 plus years on this earth avoiding all horror films in order to have believed this house would make a good family home. They bought it when my mom was pregnant with my sister and claimed to have liked the naturey feel to it. This is an optimist way of saying it's a decent sized house that had the price dragged down due to it being across from the most monstrously daunting woods that Edgar Allan Poe and Alfred Hitchcock's love child could have conjured up. It stands like 1,000 gaunt giants about to declare war on our otherwise peaceful town, with nothing but a small field the kids of the estate would play on to separate it from mine and my neighbors' homes that were bought for the same financial reason as mine. Being the morbidly curious toddler that I was, it didn't take long for me to start spending my nights gazing out of my bedroom window into the woodland. I would sometimes make my sister come up with stories about the creatures that lurked within. She would tell me about the shadow men, angry spirits that would hide in the darkness that nighttime provided, allowing them to creep at the edge of the woods, with their only human quality being their bulging eyes that they used to look at the houses on our road and decide which little boy they wanted to steal from their bed and turn into a missing poster forever. A ghost story generic enough to send a jolt of terror through my 4-year-old body, before hiding my face and asking her to continue, while searching for those bulging eyes through the trees. My fascination with the unknown was healthy at that age. It was only when I grew old enough to start staying up late that things began spiraling. That's when I started to hear the scream. It was too faint to feel threatened by, but too desperate to dismiss as kids messing around, despite that being all my parents thought of it. It'll just be teenagers staying up late in the woods, probably getting drunk and being naughty where no adults can stop them. My dad would tell me once I had reached 9 years old. Miss Nichols from next door says kids have been doing it for years. It's probably just the local hangout. My mom would speculate when brought up to her. It gave me an opportunity to push it out of my mind, but I had already spent too many nights creating stories of my own that would explain the cries of horror. The older that I got, the more that I would stay up to listen. It tended to sound sometime after 11 p.m., but always before 2 a.m. The hardest part to fathom was the identical tone every night. I had been hearing it for years now, and it was always the same few seconds at the same pitch, with the same cracks in the vocals halfway through. It sounded like it came from a woman. Maybe it was the shadow men. Maybe they had found a little boy to steal and they would toy with his soul every night. I shuddered with fear and creative excitement. By 13, I did what any imagination-riddled kid would do, and I brought it up to my best friend Tyler in class. He wasn't as creative with his thoughts, but he shared my love of finding a mystery and making it as bad as possible. I heard that an older girl went missing in the years back. I bet it's her still getting cut open slowly every night and used as a demon's punching bag. His eyes writhed in a sea of sadism. It's the same every night though, like no change at all. Have you really never heard it before? Nah, he responded while swiveling on his chair, checking for the teacher's disapproving eyes every few seconds. I told you, your road is weird. All the old people there are proper strange, and that's why the weird stuff happens in your area and not mine, he continued. My cat went missing once, man, and my neighbor's dog got hit by a car. That's all that's happened there. We even ended up finding my cat. Well, I bet the demons took it in the first place, he mumbled under his breath. I used the sudden silence as a chance to propose what I had been wanting to do for years, hoping Tyler being involved would give me the courage. You think we should go looking for it? What, your cat? You just said that you found it, didn't you? Not the cat, idiot, I spat. The scream. Tyler's eyes lit up and swam in the same look from just moments before. Heck yeah, bro. My parents are out this Friday and asked if I wanted my cousin to sleep over, but he's weird. I can convince them to let you stay. And with that, we both went home knowing exactly what our Friday evening would entail. And by the time I got to my front door, I got a text from Tyler saying that we had the green light. I got the same from my parents shortly after. It was finally happening. I got to Tyler's house just as his parents were heading out. His mom was the kind of woman to make any child who entered her home feel like one of Tyler's siblings. She was sweet, welcoming, and I'm fairly sure my own mom got jealous from time to time of my affection towards her. It's not a school night, so don't worry about a bedtime, you two. We'll probably be back late anyway. She shouted from the doorway while grabbing her coat. We both know that they would stay in long after midnight. With the sound of agreement from Tyler and a final farewell from his dad, we were alone for the night, hoping to discover something to make us feel anything but that. We played on Tyler's PlayStation for about 2 hours to be sure that we weren't waiting too long to hear the scream. Less than a fraction of our conversation not being about what we'll come back to the house knowing after tonight. I watched Tyler rummage through the boxes under his bed to find 2 torches. I noticed that mine wasn't as powerful as his on the walk to my road, but it was still enough to make me feel like a professional ghost hunter. The eerie, creepy-looking woods appeared even more eerie when I knew that I was about to be within the foreign dimness. We stood in front of its towering abyss like toddlers in the path of a demonic tsunami. I could tell neither of us wanted to lead the way in. Didn't you say a girl went missing in here once? I asked, watching my torchlight shiver in my unsteady hands. Yeah, my dad told me about it when I was little. She was from around here. You think it's her? Or do you think she was looking for the scream too? I turned to face Tyler and we shared a look of nervous hesitation before continuing into the trees. It was like the woods stood under a different sky to that we were just beneath. A much darker, hopeless, engulfing sky. The streetlight glow that deemed our torches useless on the walk down was completely absent as soon as we had left civilization behind. The woods crackled and whistled all around us. Just our presence there wrapped us in the terror I didn't know we could feel before even hearing the scream. Anything outside of our torch glow was drowning in black, and it was impossible to make out. We were hardly 20 steps in before Tyler started to lose his nerve. This is weird, man. What if we get lost? I think we should go back to mine. He turned to face me, blinding me with his torch. Don't be a baby, bro. We said that we would find the scream tonight, and that's what we're doing. We're not leaving here until... My defiance was interrupted by the unmistakable sound of a sudden, strong inhale sounding a few feet away from us. We both went silent as we darted our torchlights to where we heard it. Nothing. What the heck was that? Tyler whispered, his voice trembling. Before I could even decide between fight or flight, my eardrums were shredded by the most vile, agonizing screech a human could make. The inhale was a few feet away, but this sounded like it was right between me and Tyler. We both snapped stray twigs and tore leaves while scrambling to turn back. We must have been back in the field in 10 seconds. It felt like an hour, and we didn't stop there. Me and Tyler didn't slow down in the slightest as we sprinted back to his. I don't remember anything he said to me, but I remember the hysteric, sobbing tone in which he had said it, between the pounding of our shoes on the pavement. Tyler locked his door the second that we got back inside, and we climbed the stairs to his room and both sat on his bed. Never again, he said, not even turning to look at me. I went quiet, and so did any conversation about that scream for the next 3 years. I sometimes thought about bringing the scream back up to Tyler. I would wonder if he was secretly matching my remaining curiosity, or was happy to leave it behind him in the most isolated corner of his subconscious. If the latter was the case, I didn't want to confess just how obsessed I'd become with those woods. I still let their anonymity dance around my brain at night, while getting visually lost in their mystery. I even researched their history, and though I found no one who could match my predicament, I found a news article about the girl that Tyler had told me about. She was my age when she went missing, after drunkenly staggering into the woodland after celebrating a friend's 16th birthday. She didn't vanish, however. They found her after 35 hours. That's what the report said. But after falling hard into the rabbit holes of the internet, I found the rumors that stated the police had to drag her out from under a decaying log, covered in dirt and insects, begging them, "Please, don't let it get me. And did you kill it? Please take me home." She had moved out of towns a few months after and gave no insight to anyone online or in person as to what she went through and what she saw. At least not that anyone knows of. I often pondered whether I should have stayed in those woods that night. Nothing could have wrecked the adrenaline that noise gave me, but if I just fought it a bit more, I wouldn't be here, still desperate to finish what me and Tyler had started that night. I didn't want anyone there this time. I couldn't allow myself to be rattled by a tag-along's fear. I had to do this alone, and as I sat on the end of my bed, with the certainty of my future crashing around my brain, I came to an embarrassing realization. I don't own a torch. There was a supermarket with an aisle that sold random gadgets not too far from my house. I told myself that I would get everything I need tonight and head across the road and back into the theme of my nightmares tomorrow. I gave it one last glance as a declaration of war before I left my front door and set off walking. I was floating around my own little world with my headphones in, lost in thought about exactly what you would expect when I heard my name being called through the blaring music. I looked up to see Tyler wandering across the road, a big smile on his face. "How you doing, bro? Hey, where you off to?" He was more dressed up than he tended to be. "Oh, just heading to the shops for a couple of things. What are you doing?" "I told you in science today, man. Charlotte's having a party since her parents are away, and we're heading there now." I looked across the road to see some familiar faces from school waiting for Tyler. "Oh, yeah, I completely forgot. You should come with us. You never go out anyway. It would be good to leave that bedroom once in a while." "Oh, don't worry about me, man. Honestly, I need to go shopping anyway." "You getting food?" he asked with a raised eyebrow. "No." "You getting something important?" No," I lied. "Then you're coming, bro. Come on." Before I could retaliate further, Tyler threw his arm around me and forcefully escorted me across the road to his friends. I wasn't much of an extrovert, but having a drink with some friends didn't sound awful compared to the weekend that I had in mind. Plus, I had a bit of a crush on Charlotte, and I had been told that she felt similar. I could always get the torch tomorrow anyway. Everyone was already drunk by the time that we got there. I wasn't too upset about this since it distracted them from my very unprepared appearance. Charlotte was no exception. She ran over to me and Tyler, hugging us both but kissing me on the cheek. She pushed 2 beers into our hands and encouraged us to drink, so we did. Me and Tyler stood in her kitchen and went from awkward small talk to tipsy reminiscing to full-blown drunken idiocy. We wandered around the house together like it was an alcohol-soaked maze, before we found a spot on the living room floor, and I slumped myself next to Charlotte on the sofa. I was enjoying having the courage to flirt and do so successfully when I felt my phone vibrating. I pulled it out of my pocket to see my mom calling. Crap. It was midnight and I never messaged her to tell her that I was going out. She must have just got back from her date night with Dad. I hardly said goodbye before rushing out of the door and wobbling down the road, without even tying my shoelaces. I took a few breaks to lean against a lamppost and pray the spinning would calm. I found my panicked run downgrading into a clumsy stroll. All I could think about was what tonight distracted me from. The same images spiraled behind my eyes over and over. I caught myself muttering some of my thoughts out loud now and then. I was a mess. By the time my house was a few steps ahead, sobriety was still a mile's worth of travel away. I fumbled through my pocket for my house keys and put my phone's flash on so I could see what I was doing. I was less than a second away from sliding the key into my door when I realized where I was and what I was holding. My phone's flash was nothing compared to the light of a good torch, but I was too intoxicated to care. I turned around and faced my next bad, drunken decision. I crossed the road and made my way through the field. Alcohol had given me more courage than Tyler ever could. I wasn't scared or nervous, just excited and adventurous. The flash lazily swayed through the trees as I approached, and I didn't even stop before piercing the thick darkness. I was deeper into the woods in 30 seconds than me and Tyler got the whole time that we were there. I tripped over branches and bumped into trees, but I continued onwards. "Hello?" I bellowed. "I'm here to hear you screaming. Am I too late? Why don't you come out and let me see you?" I slurred into the air. There was nothing but the scurry of small animals and the calling of birds. I let my uncoordinated body sink to the ground and I sat against a tree. I examined my surroundings with blurred vision and let my eyes adjust. It was darker than I remembered. Actually, it was getting darker the longer that I sat. I watched any hint of light slowly vanish until I was able to acknowledge what was happening. I was falling asleep. I was awoken by a loud crackle of snapping branches. I didn't know how long I had been out, but my phone's flash was still on, so it couldn't have been long. As I tried to process what I just heard, it sounded again. It sounded like a group of people moving through the trees suddenly, and then stopping to repeat the same action. I dragged myself to my feet, only slightly more sober than I was before I had nodded off. I frantically tried to remember which way I came in as the crunching continued. I soon stopped caring and just wanted to be out of this place I willingly re-entered. The noises were getting closer. I hadn't even set off running when a familiar noise savaged these silent woods. The scream was back, and this time, whatever it was right behind me. I only ran a few feet when my path was obstructed by something. A tree or a fallen log maybe. I didn't stop long enough to analyze. I turned left to keep running and was stopped by an identical structure. I spun in every direction besides the one in which the scream just sounded from, and came to a realization that twisted my stomach and clawed at my brain. Whatever was stopping me wasn't a part of the woods. They were tall, slim silhouettes of barely human creatures blocking my every escape. They moved towards me, but their legs didn't stride. My malfunctioning brain was taken back to my sister's stories of the Shadow Men. Only these were nothing a creative mind could invent. There were no bulging eyes on their heads, just an empty abyss getting closer. As every option of freedom grew bleak, I fell to the ground, surrounded by the approaching horde, and I did all I could do. I screamed. After the echo of my horror slowly disintegrated into the wind, I still laid there cowering. Nothing was touching me, and the sounds had ceased. I was almost allowed the feeling of relief when I lifted my head and saw nothing there. I wondered if whatever I had just encountered was driven away by my gravelly call. It wasn't. All I did was give away my location to something worse. My eyes locked on to the only movement still present in the woods. Through the trees, far away enough to give me time, but close enough to make out, was a humanoid shape approaching. It didn't move like the other creatures. It had walked, but its knee joints didn't connect or support its frame like they should. It limped through the dim light my phone was still providing by the tree. Its arms were stiff by its side, and I heard the faint cracking of its bones as it approached. Its jaw hung loose from its mouth and was letting out a distant moaning, not the kind I or anyone else could replicate, more like the metallic wailing of a shipwreck. I was no longer a drunken kid in the woods. I was prey. As the cracking of its bones and grew close enough to almost reveal its full, sickening form, I turned my back and followed my instincts. This was no longer a mystery to unravel. I either ran or died. I tripped on roots and fallen branches but was too determined to stop. I saw the flicker of streetlights through the trees and found more speed within me that I didn't even know was there. Just as frightened victory began welling up in my eyes, I slammed into someone. "Whoa, slow down, son. Are you okay?" I flipped myself over and began scrambling backwards to see a police officer stood over me. Another one waited in the field. "What are you doing out here, young man? Your parents are worried sick." I tried climbing back to my feet but couldn't find the strength. I was just... something is... Before I could form a sentence, I hunched over and found myself staring at a puddle of my own vomit. "You'll be okay, son. You've just had a bit too much tonight. We'll get you some water and get you home." The officer helped me up and escorted me out to the field. I knew what was happening, but I was very much not present. What was that thing? What surrounded me? I couldn't even turn back, knowing that I would be staring at the monster's home. My parents were too relieved to see me to be angry. They just took me upstairs and helped me get ready for bed. My mom stayed in my room all night, but I don't think that I closed my eyes for a second. I've had a curfew since that night. I haven't told anyone what happened after that party, especially not Tyler. My curtains stay closed now. I can't bring myself to look out of my window and back into that den of evil. I do everything I can to avoid the thought, but there's just one thing I can't control. One thing that keeps that night fresh in my mind. Sometime after 11 p.m., but always before 2 a.m., a scream echoes through the night. A few seconds are a bit longer now, and the tearing vocals have been replaced with a gravelly distortion. It's no longer a woman's shriek. I wish that I could move far away from here, somewhere where I can't hear my own scream immortalized in those woods every night. With that being said, until I can finally leave this road, I'll listen to my scream every night, just as I did to the girls before me. I went looking for the scream of someone who got away, just as she would have done before me. That means it's still hungry. The night those woods stay silent until sunrise, I'll know some poor soul went looking for someone who already escaped, leaving their family to look for someone who didn't.